church multiplication, we highly value the idea that every church would treat multiplication as expected, as inevitable, and that they would anticipate multiplication with joy. You know, this is how God's kingdom is going to advance, is that churches multiply, disciples multiply. Any church that's not, moving towards multiplication is a church that you have to question, is it making disciples? Why isn't it growing? Like what's going on there? And so we highly value church multiplication. In doing so, we have to be able to answer the question, when does a church multiply? How do you know when? And it's good for people who are coming into churches to understand church multiplication, because if you enter into a church as a new member under different kind of pretenses, like it's just going to be us forever, it was 11, I'm going to be number 12, it's the 12 of us, until we die, right? And you can try to reproduce this idea of the Golden Girls, it's just y'all until the end, But the reality is, with multiplication, it's not necessarily a thing that you want to put out there as an ideal, that these particular faces will be together forever. What that could demonstrate is a church that's actually not healthy, that it's so tight-knit, it's so reliant on one another that it becomes exclusive to the lost, poor, broken, oppressed, those who don't know Jesus. And if the church loses that edge, that edge, that is a tension. There's a tension between devoted family and spirit-filled missionary, but you have to walk in that edge. And so church multiplication is something we want to say is should be exciting, for even a new person coming in to say, like, I'm going to know y'all now, but there may be half of us that go and multiply out in a few months or within a year. So, but how do we do that? When do we do it? This is a big question. So first, let's say this, that there are a couple of factors that are important to consider, but they're not the dominant factors in church multiplication. Let's go through those. One is this idea of there being a fixed number, a number that the quantity of people kind of, once it crosses this line, like that we're going to come in and say, no, you can't do this anymore. There's not that fixed number. We do have, some common sense logistics that need to be considered. We sometimes call it the fork rule. And that is, if you have people coming over and you're having a dinner, but your church has so many people in it that you can't get utensils, people are like shoveling mashed potatoes with their hands, then there's a logistical question that probably has a lot of other logistical questions simultaneously happen. Like, childcare, how's that working with that many people? Where are people sitting? Where are people parking? If you're going to be a light unto the world as a church, but your neighborhood views you as like the rude group that blocks them in their driveways, that's not going to work. And so logistics are real, and we have to consider the logistical nature of a group of people that's, in the 20 and 30 people gathering range, because most homes aren't necessarily built for families, that are that big, and so there's some adjustments and some things to be considered logistically. Secondly is the relational dynamics. When you have 5 or 6 people in your church and you start with a question of the night, like, let's everybody tell me one thing that's making you anxious right now, or one thing that would tempt you into anxiety right now. People can go around and share deep and share meaningful things. You can look at each other in the eyes. You can pray for one another, lay hands on one another, read scripture over each other. You can create, songs together, and have time to do all that in one night's gathering of the church in a relational setting. But now try that with 37 people. And you're not even it's gonna be midnight, and you have started gathering at 7, and you won't even notice that 3 or 4 people just got skipped, or fell asleep, or were on their cell phones. It's just a lot of people, and it becomes another beast. But again, do you create some sort of number that you say, now it's relationally too much? It's difficult to do that, right? Because really, if you're always trying to have the depth of communication interaction that you would in private space, then anything over 2 or 3 people is always going to feel like it's a whittling away. And so the way we think about that is, there are going to be some limiting factors in this, but you can do a church with probably a higher number of people if you're implementing the idea of the twos and threes. If you're saying the goal here isn't that everybody knows everybody, the goal is that everybody knows somebody and is known by somebody. And so if you think about it like that, and if you reorganize the way you operate, then you can have a meaningful, relational type of thing with 20, 25 people. But you can have everybody broken down into, the groups of twos and threes that meet regularly, pray for each other, dive into the deep, deep stuff. And then you can get somewhat deep in a bigger group together. You can have really sweet prayer nights and sweet nights of teaching and some degree of wrestling and interactivity. So there's good things you can do there. So these don't provide any kind of static ideas of like this number is the one that you have to multiply at. Here's what we'd say are the two dominating factors that do decide when churches multiply. And this could be a multiplication that happens at 7 or 8 people or at 38 people. Here's the two factors. One is going to be leadership. The leadership resources within the community are the absolute dominant factor of whether or not a church can multiply. If you do not have the leadership capacity to now move into 2 different groups that now need 2 sets of leaders, if that leadership does not exist, then multiplication is really not multiplication. It's just division. It's just splitting. It's just 2 different groups. And chances are one of the 2 groups won't really flourish. And it's going to be a sad thing in 6 to 9 months, because you don't have the authority and power to really influence people. So the way we think about leadership is that we tend to have, pastors who are oftentimes teams, like a husband and wife, and then we have co-pastors that are also oftentimes a team of a male and female type of idea. And so, and obviously you can have single pastors and single co-pastors, but it could be a single male, single female, single male, single female as co-pastors. And so the idea is you have these sort of teams, and the reason you have co-pastors in each church is those are your pastors that are in training that are getting themselves ready to be pastors of the new multiplication. And so as you see highly functioning co-pastors, that's one of the first big indications of, okay, we are now postured and ready to multiply. Now you may say, we only got 12 people. Why are we talking about multiplying? Well, because we're postured and ready to multiply. And so then that becomes the second idea. The second idea is a missional calling. Some degree of benefit for the kingdom of God, that somehow the kingdom would be advanced better with 2 different entities than it would with one. And usually it will. Usually if you just move a group of 8 people into 2 different groups of 4, assuming there are really healthy leadership there, you're creating just a lot more opportunity a lot of times if it's really led by a missional endeavor. And if it's these 4 people are going to meet on this side of town now, or they're going to go after this particular mission, these 4 are going to go after this particular mission. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So when those 2 things converge, when we see the leadership capacity, and then you see the calling, when those 2 things happen, that is usually what we would say is the time to multiply, rather than saying, an objective number of people that you cross into. Now, to do this, by the way, every church as it begins as a new multiplication has to start with clarity of their own calling and development of their own new co-pastors. They have to always be working towards the next multiplication so that the kingdom of God will continue to advance. If you're not aggressive about it, if you're not focused on it and really pursuing multiplication, the human nature is we're going to resist it. We're going to desire to, most of us are going to desire more of the comforts and the benefits of a devoted family rather than the risks and rewards of being spirit-filled missionaries. So it's really important that as a network, we kind of keep the pulse on this idea of raising up new pastors and co-pastors and listening frequently to calling and letting calling and leadership capacity be the dominant factors that the Lord uses to show us, now let's multiply. How we multiply is a different set of conversations. Different communities do it differently. there's usually a set of variables we'll ask everybody, have them pray through and sort through. And generally, as much as there are oftentimes two different missional advantages as in the multiplication, you'll typically see people, and through praying through it and messing through it, it'll all turn out that there's some kind of a missional draw one way or another. And that tends to be a really exciting, beautiful thing that really moves people towards higher degrees of priesthood and higher degrees of their own maturity and missional movement. So that is how we go about doing this this multiplication of communities.